Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another weekly drum lesson. I'm Tom Ainsworth, and today we're going to be going over the fourth and final track from the Grade 1 Trinity syllabus. And this one's called Squibnocket Waltz. You don't want to know how many times I've just tried saying that. But this one's quite a cool piece. It's probably the most simple piece out of all of them, but then we're also in 3/4. We've got a different time signature this time. All of the others are in 4/4, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter notes per bar. This time we've got 3/4, so we've got 3 quarter notes per bar. So that's just going to be counted 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So pay attention to that, get used to playing it. You've got quite a quick counting for this. You've just got one bar of 3 beats. But then we start off nice and chilled. You just got your dotted quarter notes there. So if you remember from the lesson in Belfast to Peru, we had some dotted notes there. We also had some ties. It's going to be the same principle here. So on beat 1 of the first bar, and in fact bars 1, 2 and 3, you've just got that dotted quarter note. Flick back to the start if you want to hear how that sounds. It's nice and easy, but you just want to make sure that you count in those rests. Play along to the click track as normal so you can feel that beat, but you want to be counting in 3 rather than 4, so don't get caught out with that. Now, even though it's in 3/4 and it feels like it's kind of swinging along a bit, we're still in straight time. So the fill in bar 4, we've got those 8th notes and then the quarter note on beat 3. It should be up in the top corner at the minute. Practice just looping that bar there. It's an easy one because you've just got 1, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3. That's how you're going to be counting. Just 1, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3. So practice that over and over. And just you want to have it so it's not too loud. You want to keep it fairly soft for this. We've got mezzo forte for the current dynamic here. So make sure you're not blazing that as loud as you possibly can like some of the other fills. Moving on to the A section, it drops down a little bit, so that very last floor tom note, I should say, that you've got in bar 4, try not to smack it as hard as you can, just have it nice and soft. You've got a diminuendo going there that you can see, and that's just starting higher and trailing off lower. Obviously we're playing one note there, so we can't just suddenly like roll off the volume or anything like you can on a guitar, but you just want to be aware that you don't want to hit that so hard. You want to just like let it ring out on its own, but not for too long. It's just a nice gentle hit. So we go into the main portion of this entire piece here, and this is going to be just your 3/4 waltz, and the majority of it, you've got your kick on beat 1 and you've got your snare drum on beat 3 with 8th note hi-hats or an 8th note ride cymbal going over it, depends which part we're in. Before you start tackling this piece, you want to get used to playing this groove. So in bar 6 there, so the second bar of the A section, just loop that bar over and over until you feel comfortable with it. Even if you're just playing along with the track, but just playing that bar to get a feel of how it's going to sound. And that sounds a little bit like this. So once you've got that down and you're happy with it, you're pretty much ready to tackle like 90% of this piece. There's a couple of fills, but that's the main body of it. You're just changing a couple of things. So then in the A section, I'll be referring to your bars at the minute in the A section. So bar 3 there, it says sim just above it, and you've got 3 slashes per bar. That's just referencing your beats. And you'll also see in the next bar, the 4th bar of the A section, you've got a little number 4. Again, just like I think it was Belfast to Peru, where you've got just multiple repeated bars. You can just have that so you know where you are. So sim just means basically play a similar thing. So you could play exactly the same thing as you want there. You could play, maybe add an extra cross stick or take a cross stick out. Take a hi-hat out, something like that. You don't want to make it overly complex. It's not an ad-lib, so it's not kind of a free-for-all solo. You just want to change it slightly. So here's a couple of things you might do with that. So as you heard there, I was just mixing up what I was doing with my kick and my snare pattern. I wasn't making it too complex or anything. I was always having the notes on the quarter notes, just putting things basically on beat 2, either putting a cross stick or a snare drum on beat 2, or then shifting it about. So instead of having a cross stick on beat 3, I'd have a kick drum instead. Which, to be fair, you've got those later on in the piece, so if you're struggling for ideas, just have a look at the bars further down that are a little different. You've got things like bar 17, bar 10, check those out, and they'll give you a few ideas for what you can incorporate into this. Now that 4 bar section at bar 9, so you've got 9, 10, 11, 12, you'll notice that it's got a really long crescendo and then a diminuendo afterwards, and that's basically you just working your way up to it over a 2 bar progression. So it's a really subtle change from mezzo piano up to mezzo forte there, so you want to be starting off soft, get into a similar kind of volume to what you were playing at the start of the track, and then tapering it back off. And you want to make that as smooth as possible. You don't want to be kind of quiet and then suddenly get loud two notes before the end, and then same with that. You want to make it a nice smooth transition. So again, just practice this 4 bar section and get used to getting louder and quieter, and see how much you can control it, see how subtle you can make it, but make sure all 3 of your limbs in this case, so you've got your hi-hat, your snare drum, or cross stick should I say, and then your kick drum, make sure they're all getting louder and quieter at the same dynamic. So just how you've heard there, that's exactly how I want you guys to practice it, and do that for that 4 bar section there where it's going up and down between mezzo forte, and then at bar 17 when you've got it up to forte as well, because you want to be able to do it softer and quieter. The one on bar 17 is going to have a lot bigger change, so you can play about with it a lot more with that. The one in bar 9, you just want to make it a subtle change. Definitely want to be noticeable. If someone was just listening to you there, they could say back to you straight away, okay, yeah, you definitely got louder and quieter, but you definitely don't want to be smacking it. You can get a lot bigger in bar 17 there. So then the final section at bar 21, you've got that change over to the ride cymbal. So you notice in bar 20, so as you're just tapering back down from the forte diminuendo, you've just got kick drums and hi-hats there. And that's to give you a bit of freedom, just so you're not having to like worry about playing 3 things at once there. You can just focus on having your hand over there, 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, because you just go straight into it. The rhythm's exactly the same. If you look, you've just got 8th notes, but you're going from your hi-hat over to your ride cymbal. Now practice that back and forth again, just like you were doing the practice with the crescendos and the diminuendos. You want to be practicing moving back and forth without smacking that first hit. A lot of the time when you're switching over cymbals, especially when it's a softer dynamic, we have a tendency to hit that first hit louder, and you just want to control that a bit more and keep it down. So then in bar 22 you notice you've got a fill with a rest in between it. So whereas in bar 4 right at the start we had a bit more of a simple fill, it's just 1, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3. This time we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and. Sounds a little like this. So just as you've seen me do there, just practice it over and over again, and then the more you do it, when you start getting it comfortable, bring the volume down, get really used to playing it quieter, because if you look, we're at mezzo piano there, so medium quiet, you want it to be nice and soft. Now the final kind of section, you've got that diminuendo just with the ride cymbal, so touching off of that just like you were with the hi-hats, and then you'll see in the second to last bar we've got RAL, R-A-L-L. and that just means rallentando, which is just gradually getting slower. So you'll hear, if you notice the click actually spaces out, but you've still got a bar of 3. So you want those first 2 eighth notes to be the same time as the rest of it, but then pay attention to the click and what the music's doing. It's also saying sim fill ad lib, so a cymbal fill, and ad libs just means improvise around what's happening there. So you'll notice if you go back to the start of the song, I keep it really simple because the piano's not really doing much in this, so I think it's fine just to play your cymbals on the beat. As if you were in a musical setting, that gives the other musicians an idea of how you're going to be spacing it and how they need to slow down, because the piano's playing a lot more in that bar than we are, so we want to be able to help them out. And then you finally just end on the beat 1 of the final bar, and that little kind of half moon sort of looking shape at the top, that's just a pause. So we don't have to do much with this, you just play it and let it ring out. But in music that just means that you pause for an undetermined time. So if you were listening to a conductor, say if you're in a big band or an orchestra or you're playing in some theatre, you just wait for the conductor to hold up and then carry on again. So that's what that is, it's just a pause. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, really appreciate it. If you like what you see, let me know. If you didn't like what you see, let me know. I'll be back for another lesson next week. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Tom Ainsworth Music. I'll leave links in the descriptions for that. Feel free to check out my past lessons. I've done some honours practice. Check in next week for another lesson. Subscribe so you get notifications, hit that little bell icon, and have a great week, guys.